In the year 415, in the city of Alexandria of the Roman Empire, a woman named Hypatia was brutally murdered by a group of men in the middle of the street. 1600 years later, we will try to understand the reasons behind this. The city of Alexandria lies to the north of the Great Pyramids, on the shores of the Mediterranean. It was built by Alexander the Great in 331 BC as an ancient marvel, a legendary city in Africa. Alexandria had a perfect location where the Nile Delta, the Mediterranean, and the Red Sea all met, which had easy access to the imperial capitals of Rome, Constantinople, and India through seas. Alexandria was shielded from sea storms by a rocky island that would later house the famous wonder of the Pharaoh's lighthouse. The city was connected to this island by a long man-made promontory that divided the water that once separated the Pharos and the mainland into two large, well-protected ports. Alexandria was the greatest city the Western world had ever seen. People of all nations came there to live, to trade, to learn. This was a city where Greeks, Egyptians, Arabs, Hebrews, Persians, Nubians, Phoenicians, and Italians exchanged merchandise and ideas. Alexandria was not simply a port city, it was also one of the world's most culturally sophisticated urban centers. Besides the lighthouse of Pharos, the city had thousands of temples. The most impressive seemed to have been the Caesareum and the Serapeum. The Caesareum was perched on the shore near the southernmost point of the great harbor. It was given to the Bishop of Alexandria to become the city's most prominent church. The Serapeum, the most impressive sacred compound in the eastern Mediterranean, stood out as the pagan counterpart to the grand Christian Caesareum. The greatest marvel of Alexandria, however, was the Library of Alexandria, the first true research institute in the history of the world. The scholars of the library studied the entire cosmos, from Euclid to Aristarchus, Heron to Archimedes, Eratosthenes to Appolonius. Greatest minds of the ancient world worked there. Here was a community of scholars exploring physics, literature, medicine, astronomy, geography, philosophy, mathematics, biology, and engineering. Genius flourished there. The Alexandrian Library is where we humans first collected, seriously and systematically, the knowledge of the world. There was another library in the Serapeum, which was called the daughter of the Royal Library. The Great Library of Alexandria destroyed, deliberately burned to the ground. By the year 300, nothing survived from there, except the annex library in the Serapeum, which was the brain and heart of the ancient world when Hypatia was born. She was born in Alexandria in 355 or 370, at a time when women had few options and were treated as property. Hypatia moved freely and unself-consciously through traditional male domains. She was the daughter of the philosopher and mathematician Heron. It was a Greek-speaking, upper-class family. In these circles, the boys of these elite families were getting a better education than girls and lower classes. But Theon made sure Hypatia get a great education, and she surpassed her father on every scientific field, while most Alexandrians crammed in 3- or 4-story apartments. Slavery, of course, was not even being questioned. They shared the same city, but they were from another world. 4th and 5th century authors marveled whenever a philosopher or rhetorician was able to carry on a conversation with a shopkeeper. The gap between these two worlds mattered very little to Hypatia during her life, but it would contribute dramatically to her death. There is no record, wrote Carl Sagan, in the entire history of the library that any of its scientists ever seriously challenged the political, economic, and religious assumptions of their society. The permanence of the stars was questioned. The justice of slavery was not. Science and learning in general were the preserve of a privileged few. The vast population of the city had not the vaguest notion of the great discoveries taking place within the library. The scientists never grasped the potential of machines to free people. When, at long last, the mob came to burn the library down, there was nobody to stop them. This situation was not Hypatia's worldview. She didn't believe in separation of humans. Her famous motto was, "The things that unite us are more than the things that separate us. We are all brothers and sisters." Even though she was pagan, her peoples were almost all Christians. What she was not is a Christian, nor, in the usual sense of the word, a pagan. Hypatia was not associated with any cults, rituals, divination, or magic. In her circle, the Platonic system of thought and practice was the path to divine existence. She spent whole of her life to make classic texts of mathematics and astronomy more accessible to students through editing and commentary. In the pursuit of making difficult books easier to read and to understand, she never got married. She lived her life merely to teach, to spread knowledge. The growing Christian church was getting stronger and attempting to eradicate pagan influence and culture. Cyril, the Archbishop of Alexandria, hated her because of her close friendship with the Roman governor and because she was a symbol of learning and science, which were largely identified by the early church with paganism. A fanatic group among Christians saw something more nefarious in Hypatia. They began to accuse her of witchcraft. Classic. But she continued to teach and publish until in the year 415, on her way to work, she was set upon by a fanatical mob of Cyril's parishioners. They tore off her clothes and flayed her flesh from her bones, tore out her eyes, dragged her corpse through the streets of Alexandria. Her remains were burned, her works obliterated. Cyril was made a saint. Hypatia's death was so shocking and so frightening that she quickly became a symbol of an older, more functional time that seemed to be slipping away in the early 5th century. Her death has been seen as the start of the Dark Ages, which will last more than 1,000 years. She has been defamed as a witch, marked as a feminist icon, and lionized as a martyr. Her death has been used to symbolize the corruption of the Alexandrian Church, the end of Greek rationality, and the rise of religious fundamentalism. But really, was the religion the problem here? 7 centuries ago, there was this man who initiated this age of enlightenment. Without him, the Library of Alexandria may not exist. His name was Socrates. Because Socrates said there is one God, he was killed by a pagan society. Hypatia was killed by people who believe in one God, because she was a pagan. What would happen if Hypatia and Socrates swapped places? Maybe the real problem was something different, something deeper that no one yet questioned. Thank you for watching.